Is your ideal leader collaborative or decisive? Do they ask to be looped in for everything or leave you be? Are they always around to help, or do you need to approach them? Chances are that your ideal leader is different than the ideal leader of the person next to you. Do you like the compromiser or the drill sergeant? Why do our preferences vary so much? Is it genetics? Are we predisposed to like a singular leader versus a team of leaders, or prefer over-communication to under-communication? While genetics may not play as large of a role as imagined, cultural influences are extraordinarily strong in developing the leaders we become and the leaders we follow. With the increase in multicultural teams and connections across the world, opportunities for misunderstandings and weaker relationships are more prevalent than ever. Leaders must be more willing to embrace different styles of communication and collaboration through upfront discussion and awareness. One of the pioneers in this field of research is Geert Hofstede, a Dutch social psychologist who has created the 6 dimensions of culture that are used all over the world to explore differences and similarities between countries and their leadership styles. In this interview, he provides some of the background information that led him to develop these dimensions.
People said Germans were authoritarian, and French were also authoritarian. But what they did not realize is that the source of authoritarianness in Germany is very different from the source of authoritarianness in France. And this was precisely the things which I found out, which I saw in the answers I got. I would get very different answers from German people than I got from French people.
The 6 cultural dimensions that Hofstede developed are power distance, uncertainty avoidance, individualism, masculinity, long-term orientation, and indulgence. All of these topics communicate the differences in leadership styles across countries. These are the categories for measuring how countries vary from one another based on how accessible a leader is to their followers, how much risk is tolerated, how much individual ideas are valued, equality of opportunity, and more. This is all part of the human condition, as animal species have leaders, but none that vary so greatly amongst each species. We as a species vary greatly based on the country. According to the book Leading Across Cultures and Practice, Germany has a low score for power distance, meaning that their society is more on the egalitarian side. They also have a higher score on the individualism scale. Germany as a society has less distance between the CEO and the worker in a company and values individual ideas. Brazil is the opposite of Germany. They score highly on the power distance scale and lower on the individualism scale. Here, the boss is seen as a father figure, and companies are like large families where loyalty is prized. There are just a few differences among 2 distinct cultures, but this trend is common around the world, even between countries in the same region. Research on this topic is being done at the Wharton School by Robert J. House about how different cultures define leadership. He has launched GLOBE, the Global Leadership and Organizational Behavior Effectiveness Research Program, to examine relationships among societal cultures and leadership. This project has grown over the past 6 years to represent over 60 cultures, and it has been established that there are culturally contingent attributes that can help or hinder leadership. What is seen as a strength in one culture could be a massive impediment in another. These are different leadership styles that are developed through different cultures. Research on this topic is not only being done in the US, but around the world. According to studies from Hunan University in China, there is evidence for a positive relationship between servant leadership and their outcomes. The main factors for this relationship are cultural, further demonstrating that this is a problem faced around the world. China has leaders that are very different than in the US, but they are researching the same topics to achieve the same effect. Here, 11 different team structures are shown from all over the world. These perfectly display the difference in leadership styles across cultures. France prefers a direct chain of command where information is relayed in a straight line with a clear leader. Sweden prefers a round-table discussion where a leader is present but information flows in all directions and not in a linear fashion. Asian countries prefer multiple leaders who communicate with the team, while few other countries employ the same strategy. According to the Fisher College of Business at Ohio State University, Asians are more accepting of contradictions. In an argument, Americans are more likely to pick one side and argue that, while Asians would find both sides convincing and would struggle to pick just one. Based on the book Leading Across Cultures and Practice by Fernando Lanzer, some of the largest influences on the kind of leader we become and the kind of leaders we follow is our history as a unique people and that of the countries we come from. China, for example, had emperors who had absolute power over their subjects. When there was a cultural revolution in the 1900s, only the superficial layers of culture were changed, and the Communist Party leaders enjoyed the same power as the emperors. Even now, as China transitioned further, the leaders continue to have absolute power over their citizens as the core values of culture have not changed. History is a clear influence on the types of leaders we grow to be and the types of leaders that can be present in our community. Russia has many of the same influences as China, with powerful czars and leaders in the present day that act the same. In addition to historical influences, People can be perceived differently by others in relation to their own culture. Mexicans who were asked to describe the typical American said that they were serious, reserved, averse to risk, and restrained. People from Japan who were asked the same question said that the typical American was spontaneous, relaxed, uninhibited, impulsive, and emotional. These two descriptions of the same group of people were so vastly different, and that's because these descriptions are in relation to the culture of the people describing Americans. The Americans are emotional compared to the Japanese, but reserved compared to the Mexicans. This can provide the basis for problems in teams when communicating with others because of their perceptions. In Hamlet by William Shakespeare, there are two foil characters, Hamlet and young Fortinbras, both of whom lost their fathers but acted extremely differently in response to this event. Hamlet comes from Denmark, a country with a low score in uncertainty and risk avoidance, which is one of Hofstede's cultural dimensions, meaning that those from Denmark are usually less likely to plan and organize in the hopes to minimize the risk of uncertainty and confusion. Hamlet and other characters from Denmark, like Claudius and Laertes, choose to partake in multiple high-risk plans. Fortinbras comes from Norway, a country that values quick results and also does not tend to care either way as to risk avoidance. As Fortinbras grew up in that environment, he was decisive and took action to avenge his father, and did not mitigate his plans on account of risk. Even when Hamlet was written centuries ago, these topics and differences in culture were present in their actions that were rooted in their history as a country. These two characters came from different cultures where different skills were valued. Fortinbras succeeded in his goal to avenge his father. Hamlet was hesitant to take decisive action. Fortinbras followed a concrete plan, while Hamlet tried multiple things before finally achieving his goal in the end. Comparing Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston to Hamlet, racial differences are an impactful part of Hurston's story. Black, white, Native American, they are perceived differently based on their actions and their history. When Janie, the main character, first meets Joe Stark, her soon-to-be second husband, Janie says he was a seal brown color, but he acted like Mr. Washburn or somebody like that to Janie. Hurston 30, where Washburn was a white family that had taken Janie in as a child. After centuries of oppression and slavery of African Americans by white people, a black man who was perceived to be acting like a white man is a great cultural shift. It is because of the way he walked, the clothes he wore, and the way he talked that Stark acted like a white man. Joe Stark became a leader in their community further in the book because of his actions and the way he portrayed himself. White people were sure of themselves and walked with confidence, while few were the African Americans who could claim the same during this time. When Joe Stark acted like a white man among African Americans, those leadership qualities were displayed and people reacted to them in a positive manner, making him town mayor and giving him power. As cultural awareness becomes more and more prominent in today's society, emotional and cultural intelligence plays a larger role in the success of certain leaders. Julia Middleton has created a nonprofit on this very topic and has gone to talk as a part of TEDx East End about this.
And I think increasingly you're now beginning to see people who know that you need CQ, the ability to work with people and lead people who are not like you. Crucial. I think we'll carry on appointing people for IQ because no one's got the imagination to break away from it. We'll carry on, sadly, sacking some people a few years later for a total absence of EQ, but I believe that in future we will be promoting people for cultural intelligence.
CQ, or cultural intelligence, will become more important in the future as well as our world becomes smaller and smaller. Leaders who wish to be successful in their teams must embrace these new qualities and work to integrate them. We as students, soon to be exiting high school, hold a unique position to be the leaders of the future. Every day, our world becomes smaller and more interconnected, changing constantly, and it is especially important that we change with it. Soft skills like collaboration and communication are gaining importance when hiring, and soon, skills like working across cultures and with many kinds of people will become increasingly prevalent. A webinar from the Berlitz Cultural Insights series discusses 4 ways leaders can attain cultural agility amongst other people. The first is cultural due diligence, where people accurately assess the possible effects of culture and relationships. The next is style switching, where rather than using specific behaviors, a broad behavioral repertoire is used to achieve goals. The other two, cultural dialogue and cultural mentoring, are used to bridge the cultural gaps through conversation and expand one's sphere of influence. All of these strategies can be used in conjunction with others to embrace cultural differences while being the most effective and efficient. Companies will prioritize their bottom line, but more and more people are increasingly aware about the humans working for these companies and the concept of work-life balance. Leaders must bring new solutions to the problems present with differences in culture, and we are these leaders.